Sometimes we look for games that we can sink a lot of time to and really get value out of our purchases. In this video, we showcase 10 PS4 games from 2015 that you might sink over 100 hours into. Number 10, Divinity Original Sin Enhanced Edition. Divinity Original Sin was released back in June of 2014 on PC. It later came to the PlayStation 4 in October of 2015 in the version of an Enhanced Edition. The game is a turn-based RPG with cooperative multiplayer and a highly interactive world. Now, the one thing that people might not like about Divinity Original Sin is that the game does not hold your hand. If you have never played an old school RPG and a game that really doesn't hold your hand or tell you exactly where to go, Divinity Original Sin may not be your cup of tea. But if you want a game where you really get lost in the world and you really have to explore every nook and cranny of the world and actually take advantage of the entire world that Divinity Original Sin offers, definitely check it out. And with the Enhanced Edition released on the PlayStation 4, a ton of new content was introduced, new story sequences, gameplay options, and fully voiced dialogue. Divinity Original Sin definitely isn't for everyone, but if you're looking for more of a hardcore style RPG, Divinity Original Sin will be right up your alley. And these old school style RPGs always have a lot of content and a lot of things to do, and there's reason to play through Divinity Original Sin multiple times. Number 9 is a remaster developed by Gearbox Studio, Borderlands: The Handsome Collection. Borderlands: The Handsome Collection is a remastering of Borderlands 2 and Borderlands: The Pre-Sequel, which were two games that were released on 7th generation consoles. The Handsome Collection collects both those games, ups the resolution to 1080p, 60 frames per second, all that good stuff. And a great thing about Borderlands: The Handsome Collection is that it comes with a ton of DLC that in the past you would have had to pay for. And just getting Borderlands 2 is a game that you might spend over 100 hours on alone, collecting all the guns, doing all the side quests, playing through the game with all the different characters. There's a lot of time to sink just in Borderlands 2, and now you're getting Borderlands: The Pre-Sequel as well. The Pre-Sequel tells you what happens between Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2, and while it's not a definitive follow-up to Borderlands 2, it's gonna give you more of the same of what you're getting out of Borderlands 2, and that means a ton of more content. And as I stated earlier, you're getting a bunch of DLC content as well, so there's a ton of hours to be put into Borderlands: The Handsome Collection. Number 8 is very different from the rest of the games on this list. It's a game that some might be flabbergasted is even on this list, but it's Rocket League, developed by Psyonix. Now, Rocket League isn't the type of game like Divinity or Borderlands where you're gonna have a lot of side quests to do, you're gonna have a lot of missions to do, you're gonna have a giant world to explore. No, Rocket League isn't about that at all. Rocket League has a pretty simplistic set of game modes, but that doesn't really matter because Rocket League is one of those games that you're gonna constantly go back to. It's the perfect kind of party game that PlayStation consoles typically lack. While you see Nintendo consoles with games like Super Smash Bros., the PlayStation has never had too many games that really cater to a party-centric atmosphere. Well, Rocket League definitely does that, and Rocket League is the kind of game that you'll be playing for 6-8 hours a night with a bunch of your friends over, or you might just go with one friend online and you play for a couple hours. But it's a game for a lot of people, never gets old, and the best thing about Rocket League is that it's only $20. It's not only a game that you're gonna sink a lot of time into, but it's also one of the best games of the year. It's one of the most original and captivating titles. Psyonix completely delivered with the concept of Rocket League, and they were rewarded heavily. Now, this definitely isn't a game that you want to play by yourself. Like I said, Rocket League is a game that was made for party-centric atmospheres. If you're playing by yourself, yeah, it'll be fun for a little bit, but you're not going to find yourself going back to it like you would if you were playing with 2 or 3 friends. Still, Rocket League is a great multiplayer game that every PS4 owner should have. Number 7 is the strategy JRPG Disgea 5 Alliance of Vengeance. Now, Disgea 5 definitely isn't the kind of game that caters to everybody. It has a very niche audience. If you're into Japanese style games, you'll find something to like with Disgea 5, and if you're really not into things like that, Disgea 5 won't be the game for you. But it is a game that if you get into it, you will be playing it for well over 100 hours. Now, Disgea 5's main storyline already has a significant amount of content, but the main storyline in the Disgea games is only a small percentage of what the game has to offer. Leveling up to the max level, trying to get all your abilities, getting your entire party leveled up, getting them all their abilities, the right equipment, that's a process that in the Disgea games takes a very, very long time. The thing about these Disgea games though, it's either you really get into them or you don't get into them at all. It's not a game where you just play the story mode and then you're out. It's a game where if you really do get invested into it, expect to be playing it well over 100, 150, even 200 hours. But if you aren't a fan of these styles of games, you're going to be playing it for 40 minutes and then dropping it altogether. Nonetheless, Disgea 5 is potentially a game you could be playing for a very long time. Number 6 is one of the most popular PlayStation 4 exclusives of the year, Bloodborne by From Software. Obviously, Bloodborne is very similar to the very popular Souls games, and if you're a fan of Dark Souls or Demon Souls, you know just what you're getting into when you play Bloodborne. Now, a single playthrough on Bloodborne isn't going to take over 100 hours. Rather, your first playthrough on Bloodborne is probably going to take anywhere from 25 to 30 hours. But there's always extra content and always a reason to play through the game multiple times. You're always finding things that you didn't see in the last playthrough. You're noticing things are different in every playthrough. Play as a different class, use different weapons, tackle objectives in different ways. There's a lot of replayability in Bloodborne. It's not one of those RPGs with a lot of open content and a lot of side quests. Rather, it's a game that, while it doesn't have as much content as a typical open world game, it gives you a lot of reason to replay boss fights, explore the same regions over and over again, read every piece of text to really understand the story. Bloodborne is a game that if you play it, you really get invested into the world and the lore of the game, and you want to look through every nook and cranny and find every last bit of detail that Bloodborne has, because it does have a lot of detail in its world. And that's not to say that Bloodborne doesn't have a lot of optional content. It does. Specific items you can find, even specific boss fights, multiple endings. There is a lot of things to do in Bloodborne, but even after you do everything, you're still gonna want to replay it, because there's always gonna be something that you're gonna do differently, or just something you can learn through each playthrough, just get better at the game. It's a very addictive game, and it's a game that's gonna keep you coming back for more. Number 5 is another remaster, the Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD remaster released on the PlayStation 4. Now, Final Fantasy X and X-2 were originally released on the PlayStation 2, then they had an HD remake released on the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita, and earlier this year it was also released on the PlayStation 4. Now, if you can't get over some of the aging in Final Fantasy X, at this point the game is over a decade old, and while the collection was released this year, the essence of the game is from a game that was released in 2001. But if you're looking for pure content, it really doesn't get better than the Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD collection. Final Fantasy X is a game that if you want to do everything, some people it takes them over 100-120 hours. The main story by itself, without doing any of the additional content, will probably take you anywhere from 50 to 55 hours. If you rush through the single player story and don't do any of the side content, the game will probably take you 40 to 45, maybe 50 hours. But then you also have Final Fantasy X-2, and once again, if you rush through that game, it's probably going to take you 40 to 45 hours. But then there's a lot of additional content in Final Fantasy X, and there's a ton of additional content in Final Fantasy X-2. Now, obviously, if you already played Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X-2, there's not a lot to get out of the HD collection. Unless you want to replay the game, if you already played these games, it's probably going to be a pass. But if you've never played Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X-2, and you're looking for a game with a ton of content, the collection is a fantastic deal. Just a wealth of quality gameplay for JRPG fans in this collection. Number 4 is another Final Fantasy game, but of a different kind. It's Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward. Final Fantasy XIV is a game with a storied history. The original launch was an absolute piece of garbage, and then A Realm Reborn was released and became one of the most popular MMOs on the market right now. The first major expansion pack was released earlier this year titled Heavensward, and this expansion increases the amount of content in Final Fantasy XIV significantly. Heavensward obviously extends Final Fantasy XIV's main storyline, and in the expansion pack the story deals with the Dragon Song War. But out of Heavensward, you're gonna get new dungeons, weapons, a new class, the level cap is increased all the way to 60, and Final Fantasy XIV is a game that they're constantly adding content to over the months because it is a pay-to-play MMO. It does cost $15 a month. But FF14 is by far the best MMO you can play on the PlayStation 4, and Heavensward only amplifies the quality of the game. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy XIV, you definitely have to get Heavensward, and if you're just looking to get into the game, you can actually get Final Fantasy XIV, Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward, and a month of game time for one price of $60. That's gonna give you a ton of time, but like I said, keep in mind that you are gonna have to pay $15 a month after your free month is over. Number 3 is Destiny: The Taken King by Bungie. Destiny was one of the most controversial games of 2014. A lot of people really enjoyed Destiny, but a lot of people also saw that Destiny was a game with a lot of flaws. Ever since Destiny's release, it's gotten a steady stream of patches, and it also got 2 DLC pieces, but Destiny: The Taken King was a big expansion pack that added a lot of content to the game. Destiny was already a game that a lot of people spent well over 100 hours on. For many people, Destiny is the only game they play on the PlayStation 4. For them, Destiny: The Taken King was a reason for Destiny to be the only game they played on the PS4. But for others that were put off by Destiny in 2014, or for people that never played Destiny, Taken King made Destiny a lot more accessible to everybody. It fixed a lot of the problems that were present in Destiny back in 2014, and while the Taken King doesn't make Destiny perfect, it makes it a much more palatable and enjoyable experience all the way through. And obviously, with the consistent updates that Bungie provides and the consistent content patches, Destiny is a game that you'll really never run out of things to do. Whether it's getting a better weapon, finishing a raid, or just playing a bit of multiplayer, Destiny always gives the player something to do. And for new players of Destiny, you can actually pick up the base game of Destiny and Destiny the Taken King for one price of $60. That also includes the 2 previous DLCs, so that's a really good buy for those of you that never played Destiny. The Taken King is not only a game that you could spend over 100 hours on, to be perfectly honest, Destiny is a game that some spend over 500 hours on. Number 2 is the open world stealth game Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, developed by Kojima Productions. Metal Gear Solid isn't typically the game you associate with having a ton of content. Metal Gear Solid 5 changed all of that with its new open world settings, and with the inclusion of a ton of side ops. We're talking somewhere around 150 side ops in addition to the 50 main missions. Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain is easily the most content-filled Metal Gear game. If you rush through the single player, the game won't take you 100 hours to beat. You can probably finish the single player in around 30 to 35 hours, but with the inclusion of the side ops and the open world of Afghanistan, there's a lot of things to discover and a lot of things to do. Don't forget that Metal Gear Solid 5 also includes an online mode in Metal Gear Online. If you eliminate Metal Gear Online, it's already very easy to spend 100 hours in Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain without doing everything. But with the inclusion of the online mode, it just adds even more content to the already content-filled MGS5. And while some may consider that Metal Gear Solid 5 does give up on its story for the addition of the extra content, the gameplay is still on point, and you're still gonna have a damn good time exploring Afghanistan, playing through the main story, and then going through and playing through all the side ops. It's a great stealth game, a game that has a lot of content, and it's one of the best games of 2015. And finally, number 1, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, why The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt takes the number 1 spot is because while Metal Gear does offer a lot of content, like I said, with that game, it did suffer in the story department. What The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt does right is that the game offers a lot of content, but it also makes all of the content meaningful. In some of these bigger games with a lot of content, at some point, a lot of people find some of the content mundane and repetitive. That isn't the case with Witcher 3 because every little bit of the world of Witcher 3 is very fleshed out and detailed. Everything that you do in the game, every side quest, every area that you explore, it actually feels like it has a purpose to the world building of The Witcher. And Witcher is another game that, yes, you can rush through the single player story and beat the game in 40 to 45 hours, but really if you're doing that, you're not getting all that you can out of The Witcher 3 because some of the side content is just as good as the main story content. Add to the fact that the first piece of DLC, The Witcher 3 Heart of Stones, was just released, and that adds another 12 to 15 hours depending on your playstyle, and there's another piece of DLC releasing for Witcher 3, and it's rumored that that piece of DLC will add around 30 hours of gameplay. But even without the DLC, Witcher 3 is a game that you can easily invest over 100 hours into, and in The Witcher 3, it is a game that you're gonna want to do everything. It's gonna take you well over 150 hours, approaching into that 200 hour mark. The Witcher 3 is a game that's loaded with content, and obviously it's also loaded with quality. So that is going to wrap up this video. That is 10 games on the PlayStation 4 in 2015 so far that you can spend over 100 hours in. Keep in mind, there is a glaring omission in Fallout 4. That's because when this video is recorded, Fallout 4 has not been released yet. We will make a similar video to this at the end of the year with the inclusions of games like Just Cause 3, Fallout 4, and some other games that are going to release in the last 2 months of the year. So thank you for watching our countdown. Is there a game we missed? Let us know in the comment section down below, and let us know your requests for future videos and future top 10 lists. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.